How do you efficiently get around Yosemite? Check it out on this episode of How Not to Highline.
Hi, my name is Aurelio Rosa, and I'm in Yosemite for the first time. I'm a highliner, but I don't know where to highline here. I don't know where the anchors are, I don't know the paths or where to park. So maybe I can find someone to show me where not to highline.
Who's this guy up here?
It's got bright colors. Hey dude, are you a highliner?
I have done it once or twice around here.
Well, I'm new here. Could you show me where not to highline?
Yes, I definitely know what not to do around here.
So I hope you like cheesy skits. My name is Ryan Jinks and this is my gear room. And today I'm going to share with you Yosemite Beta if you are like Aurelio and have never been there before. I know if you are in a new place, it can sometimes suck up a lot of your short trip trying to just figure your way around things. You don't know what to take for anchor material, you don't know what the anchors are like, you don't know where they're at, and you're trying to base all this off of people's Instagram photos. So I'm going to share with you how to get around, where to park, what not to do, and what all the anchors look like for all the classic lines. I'm also going to share with you some non-classic lines so we can alleviate some of the traffic on the popular areas. Now I want a big disclaimer on this video. I am not trying to make Yosemite super crowded. I'm not trying to encourage you to break rules. I'm not even going to show you how to break rules. I am asking that you don't break the rules and ruin Yosemite's access for the local slackliners that want to highline there. I want you to enjoy Yosemite in the fullest if you do get a chance to come visit here, because it is an awesome place. It is technically where highlining got started, and I want to make that experience better for you. So first of all, let's explain when not to come to Yosemite. The winter, it's snowy, so that's kind of an easy one to say you're not going to probably highline much. But I've had many people come in April, May, April, June, and you can't highline almost anything there. The Rostrum has peregrine falcon season from mid-March to mid in June. There is a website that you can check the status of that. Sometimes the Lost Arrow Spire has been closed during that same season. And the Lost Arrow Spire is quite a hike. It's snowier at 7,000 feet elevation than it is at 3,500 feet of elevation. So depending on the snow that year, access to the Lost Arrow Spire can be difficult. And then Taft Point really can't be accessed because the Taft Point trailhead where you park is on Glacier Point Road, and they close that until they know it's not going to snow anymore. So mid-May, sometimes June, before they open that road up. Same thing with Tuolumne, where you can do Mathis Crest and Eichhorn Pinnacle. Can't get up to that road until middle of summer. They don't open the road until they know they won't have to snow plow it anymore. And even if they do open it immediately, there's tons of snow up there, making it very, very difficult to rig something like that. So early spring is a terrible, terrible time to come to Yosemite. And when it's really hot in the valley, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, then you oftentimes get afternoon thunder showers. The most predictable weather we have is September, October, and November, and sometimes the first 2 weeks of December. That is where you can access every line and have really great weather. Now let's talk about some rules. You cannot use a drone in Yosemite, and so you cannot film with a drone, but you cannot tag with a drone. There is a way to tag every highline in Yosemite without a drone. Another rule is camping. This is a tricky one. You can't camp within 4 miles of a trailhead. So for example, Lost Arrow Spire is like right there at the line of where it's legal to camp. As far as the Rostrum goes, that's right next to the road, so that's obviously a no-go. And Taft Point is only a mile away from the trailhead, technically 2 from Glacier Point. So you're like not legally able to camp there. But a good strategy, if you are going to be in Yosemite for a week, is to arrive very late at night and go to Camp 4. And then you sleep in line, waiting. Somehow that's legal to literally camp in the walkway. And I think they open it at 8 a.m., which is obnoxious that it's so late in the morning if you're trying to go and Highline that day. But make an effort to camp in Camp 4. It's a first come, first serve. So that's why you have to wait in line 4, 5, 6 hours before it even opens in order to get a spot. But if you have a spot and you have it for a week or two, however long you're there, you can use that as base camp and then go do Taft Point for a day, go do Rostrum for a day, and then you can leave your stuff there and your car, because you now have a legal spot to leave your car overnight, and go do Arrow Spire for 2 nights. Now, if you are going to backpack at all, you need a wilderness permit. They are free. The only reason they're obnoxious to get is because the permit office doesn't open early, so if you're trying to get an early start, it's the only issue. But they have a permit office at the Wilderness Center in Yosemite Village, and they also have one right as you enter Highway 120 entrance station. Right after you enter the gate, there's a bathroom right there and an office. And in that office, if you're there at 8 a.m. or later in the summer, then you can get a backpacker's permit. You also need this for Mathis Crest and Cathedral Peak, which is where Eichhorn Pinnacle is. You legally can't camp right there. Plus, I mean, you're on top of a mountain. There's no water. But you can't technically camp there. But if you go down further to higher or lower Cathedral Lake and then go do Mathis, you can camp down there. If you are at the permit office, try to get Half Dome permits. You do need permits to hike Half Dome, even if it's just during a day. And if you're trying to Highline Half Dome, which is a really cool highline, quite a hike. And sometimes when you get the permit, you can get it with the Little Yosemite Valley Backpackers permit. So you can camp halfway up, go do Half Dome, camp here again, and come down. That is the best. Trying to do Half Dome in a day, really long day. But if that's your only option and you want to do it, you can. But while you're at the permit office, try to get a last minute lottery ticket. Most people have to get it months in advance, and you can go to the website and try, if you know when your trip is going to be, to get a Half Dome permit way in advance. And if you are lucky enough to get a Half Dome permit, try to get 2 extra and call me. Now, if you are going to camp illegally, which please don't because it's going to possibly create more issues, try to make an effort. Like, don't set up your camp early. Don't make a fire. Don't sleep until 9, leaving all your crap out. If you're going to stealth camp, be stealthy about it. I'd rather you not. I mean, if somebody caught you and they're going to associate it with the Highline you're doing, and it's going to create access issues. I've had people sleep near the road at the Rostrum, like next to their tires. Don't sleep at your anchor. I mean, everyone can see where the Highline is. Make an effort if you're going to not follow that rule. And don't think sleeping in your car is creative by any means. That's the first place rangers check. I've gotten 2 tickets from trying that. They know you're in there. If you think you're some van expert, still don't. So there are places to park right outside the valley if you're going to do the van thing. But just don't try to sleep in your car. It's like the last place you should be sleeping if you're trying to stealth camp. Another thing you got to consider is where to put your food. You have to park where there's a bear box because you have to put your food in a bear box, or at least carry it all with you. But then you need a bear canister, even though hanging your food off a Highline is a really effective way of not having bears get your food. But don't leave food in your car. It's not like a suggestion. Bears will get into your car. They get into like 5,000 cars a year. Make an effort to check under your seats. Don't leave any food under there. I've never had my car broken into. I've seen cars. If you get up early in the morning, you can see cars that have been broken into by bears. They peel down the window, and it's really interesting how strong a bear is. But anyways, keep your stuff in a bear box or a bear canister, or at least hang it on your Highline. So if you want to leave a lineup for more than a day, you technically can. You're technically not supposed to leave a line unattended, but if you leave at night and come back in the morning, it's treated like a fixed rope, whereas fixed ropes can be left on El Capitan or whatever for the climbing community, but they can't be left unattended for a week. So if you're going to leave at night and come back right away in the morning, it's basically not a problem. We do have to realize that if some random person gets on your line and gets hurt, we're probably never going to highline Yosemite again. So take that in consideration when you leave your line unattended. This is more of an issue at Taft Point than at the Rostrum, because there's a lot more visitors, park visitors at Taft Point. Another important rule is that waterfalls are banned. This includes slacklining over the river, down in the valley, like at El Capitan Bridge. But the biggest issue right now is not to highline over waterfalls. This includes Cascade Falls, Upper Yosemite Falls, Nevada Falls, Vernal Falls. So a few years ago, it was being rigged a lot. And I mean, every weekend, all summer. And then another thing the park doesn't like is how the bolts were sprayed. Dean Potter used a lot of bolts at Upper Falls because he rigged his stuff really tight. And so the bolts are like right there. Now you have to look past the rusty rail in order to see those few bolts. And Nevada Falls has a really janky looking, ugly, rusty railing that, that we crossed over and put some bolts right there and established a line on Nevada Falls. In the same manner, Upper Falls was rigged, and legally, we hand drilled everything and made one side all natural. Then in June 2017, we rigged Vernal Falls. We legally tagged it, rigged it off of alien cams off of one side, and very carefully protected the tree on the other. It was only up for less than 24 hours. But Obama came that weekend, and we were way out of the way, no problem. Randomly, he decides to come up the Mist Trail, which is where Vernal Falls is. So it got a lot of attention when they tried to kick everybody off the trail and our line is up. So about a month later, they're just like, we don't understand this. We're going to ban all waterfalls. It's too touristy. They need to go somewhere else. So a culmination of a lot of things led up to this pimple popping. And luckily, to count our blessings, they let us highline at Taft Point, which is the easiest place to get to. The most popular to be rigging, and that is touristy. So they haven't banned us from all tourist areas. And since the ban, we went back up to Nevada Falls, removed those bolts, and made that area look like it never had anything there. We hope in the future that we can work out some sort of a permit system where they'll allow us to rig it a few weeks a year. But currently we cannot highline over waterfalls. So if you come there and you're all determined to highline on a waterfall, you could potentially piss some rangers off and just make access harder for us all. Our relationships with Yosemite are pretty fragile. It's like that with most places people highline. So if you come to an area that you're not from, just please really respect the access issues so we don't have more of them. So now let's jump into an overall view of where things are at. First, this is a map of the center of California. This dot right here is where I live. So if you are in the area, please stop by and say hello. There are 3 ways to get into the valley from our side of the Sierras, and that is Highway 120, which is a great route for those coming from the Bay Area or up north like I am. And then Highway 140 is another way, which is good for the winter if Highway 120 is too snowy. And then there's Highway 41 if you're coming in from the south. Now to get in the park is $35 for a 7-day pass, but there is no one at the entrance station between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the summers. And the gate is open. So the valley is basically one giant one-way loop with a few exceptions. We have Camp 4 and the lodge near each other. We have parking for overnight backpacking parking near where the Half Dome Trail is. You can also leave your car there and then take the shuttle to start the trail for the Lost Arrow Spire if you don't have a Camp 4 parking ticket. And if you head up towards Highway 41, Right after Wawona Tunnel, about 1 mile, you have the Rostrum parking area. And then if you continue up that road and then take a left up to Glacier Point Road, you will find the Taft Point trailhead, and that is about a mile away from the Taft Point Highlines. Now the Lost Arrow Spire, the Rostrum, and Taft Point are the 3 most popular areas that people highline. And the Rostrum and Taft Point are the most easy to get to. So they are rigged often, and to alleviate that, we are trying to establish some more out of the way, just as beautiful highlines. We will share those other highlines, including Eichhorn Pinnacle and Mathis Crest, in the next episode. So I do ask that you try not to rig the classic lines if you have the other options to go to, and some of those other options are open year-round. But first, let's start off by showing you the Taft Point area when we were there with Aurelio.
Okay, so this is the Taft Point parking lot. This is where we are going to be today. Behind me you can see there is a restroom, there are some garbages, and there is one bear box at the very end of the parking lot over there if you do need to leave food here. You cannot leave food in your car, so you always have to leave food in bear boxes. That is not a suggestion around here, it's a legitimate thing. But we have found success in leaving our cars here overnight. This is kind of a trailhead for many backpackers. If you get here after 8 a.m., it is a shit show. So we are going to yard sell and then go find parking after we get everything ready to go. How not to pack minimally. If you're new to Yosemite like Aurelio and you don't know how to pack light, please watch our minimal gear video. So here is the 60-foot Highline. Highlines are named by feet, so that's why we use feet so much around here. But it just goes to that point right there, and you have 1 bolt here and 3 bolts up there. Now in the path there was only 2 bolts here, so we added this bolt. Justin and I added this bolt back in the day. This is a perfect example of bimetallic corrosion. This is all stainless steel except for this zinc plated washer, and that's why that looks like that. But anyways, this moves, but I don't think you're going to pull it out. But you have enough bolts here to make this safe. And another thing that we found, if you really want to make this a bit safer, is you can put we used to use a span set or rope if you pad it well. It's a nice little notch here, and you can wrap tail of webbing, something around that. Just pad it, and this side is pretty safe considering that the 1 bolt isn't perfect. Okay, so every line here at Taft is easy to just walk around to the other side. And this side has 3 bolts right here. And it has 1 bolt back there. So if you back it up to that, it's pretty safe. This guy has seen better days, so there's no hanger on him. What's it look like, Aurelio?
Amazing, huh?
Yeah, let's see here if I can do this without killing my phone or me. So the exposure direct is super good enough, but you get a pretty good view out of it. Fun fact, if you want to rig a 100 meter, we have set up lines that go to, I believe, that tree there. The problem is getting over there. One option is to rappel down this side and then scramble up that, but that's a bit sketchy. I prefer hiking around and then getting down to that tree, rappelling that tree, grabbing the tagline that people throw down here, and then you have the rope to assist you back up. And then that tagline and rope, you can maybe tie the ends together, but that could be your tagline. Drones are not legal in Yosemite. There are ways to get your line across without using them. So the bolts over here are all probably the best bolts around here. So we have 4 bolts here. One's hiding under the tree right there. And these are all 3/8 inch bolts, but they're good ones. They're all solid. And if you like to back stuff up, you can use this crack right behind it. And you want to know how big it is? That's how big it is. And the line goes to right there. And this is the photo that everyone has on their Facebook header shot. And this right here is where all the magic happens. It's kind of a neat spot. You can see here that we have 4 bolts, and that the quality of these bolts, yeah, they could use a little love, but they've held everyone and everything so far. There are 4 of them. If you like to back stuff up, number 2 cam, some aliens. Number 2 black diamond cam fits in here. Number 2 fits in here. So you have options. Now, instead of going to the bush right there, the almost 200 is what we named our almost 200 meter line, went to right in here. We did a Highline rigging example showing this line and how we rigged it, so you can get the beta on that. But pretty much all the anchors that we have on each of the 3 lines at Taft are the anchors for the Highlines that go across the gap. Now out there, from this point over to the 170 bolts, which are around the corner, is the 960 foot line that we did with Jerry 2 or 3 years ago. Okay, these are 4 pretty good 3/8 inch bolts, and the edge is pretty close, so the padding issues aren't bad on this side, but back there the padding is a bit tricky. Okay, if you come between these rocks here, we've got 2 bolts where somebody has taken the hangers, and we have 4 bolts. You can't see this one, there's a bolt right there, and these bolts face me right here. So you kind of have to go over this rock in order to pull on them straight. But the edge right here is way over here. And the rope, the anchor, the line goes right across this rock. And so padding is very important right here. As you can see, the other Highline anchor is right there. So you have to take padding very serious here. Maybe tighten your Highline a little more. You don't use these bolts specifically. You actually wrap a rock behind this and use this as a giant A-frame. And then we went over to a tree over there. I think a better spot could be one of the rocks up there, and maybe even further back over here we could rig an anchor and get a full 1,000 feet instead of just 960. But this Highline right here is my How Not to Highline logo. So this is a very awesome spot. I've rigged it many times, and this is pretty much where I learned to Highline.
Now let's talk about the Rostrum. This is a nice area because rarely will you see anybody who's not a climber or a Highliner down there. And this is the parking area that you leave your car at. It is 1 mile past the Wawona Tunnel, the tunnel with the famous view that you see on license plates and every photo of Yosemite. Now keep in mind that this parking area has no restrooms, no bear boxes, but it does have cell phone reception, unlike Taft Point parking, which does not have cell service. The beginning of the trail starts at the end of the parking lot. It's just steep at the beginning, and then it's fairly a normal trail. It's very important that you don't continue straight down the trail or you'll go off a cliff. That cliff is something you rappel to get to the bottom of the rostrum in case you're climbing it. But if you're highlining it, you take a right. If you're looking for the trail that goes right, you will see it. And you go right, and then you will find yourself on top of the cliff side of the rostrum. Now this line is also seasonally closed. It can be done in the winter. The road is open year-round. If there is a bunch of snow, which we have done before, it just makes being near the cliff edge a little bit more risky. So be sure you're clipped in if you're going to do that. But from March 15th to the middle of July, roughly, you can check the link in the description below to see if that area is open. Otherwise, it's closed for the peregrine falcons to make babies. So you'll find 4 glue-in bolts for the 80-foot Highline. You'll find 3 older bolts for the 110-foot Highline. That can also be used for the 20-foot Highline, which has glue-in bolts on one side. And the glue-ins that are the furthest east on the cliff are for the 195. A few years ago, Justin and I changed almost all the bolts in that area to glue-ins because the older ones were moving a lot, and as people turned hangers, people were stealing hangers, so you'd show up and there'd be no hangers. So we installed glue-ins. They're super bomber, and it makes that area a lot safer. Now you can back up the 3 bolts on the 110 footer that have not been changed to the bolts on the 195. We didn't change those because they were pretty good considering, and the bolts are turned often to rig the 20 footer. So we don't really have a good glue-in bolt solution for a hanger that can spin for multiple uses. So in order to get to the rostrum, you have to climb the backside of the rostrum. So you go over to a bush where you can see many rappels have been done, rappel into the notch, and then you have to climb the crack that goes up it. It's 5, 6, many people free solo it. I don't recommend it because if you do slip, you're going a long, long way down there. I always rope up, and then that rope that I use, which I use to rappel, and then it's used to belay me, is the rope I use for my tag line. I can tag both the 80 or the 110 footer with that climbing rope. Now, if there's only 2 of you when you're rigging, your belayer kind of has to go up and pull your pieces out and then rappel and then go back up to the tree, and now you're both on either side ready to move your rope over to the anchors. Now on the rostrum, there are dedicated bolts, 3 glue-ins each for the 80 footer and the 110 footer. And now recently somebody put in 3 more glue-ins that face the far wall. So they're facing the correct direction, and you always have to have, for example, the 110 foot Highline rigged, so you can't really share those bolts. It's actually kind of nice to have those 3 extra bolts now because those lines that go to the far wall are rigged more often now. In order to get to that far wall, you just hike up and around. I don't recommend trying to drag a tag line along that cliff edge. It's kind of a bushy, slanted, dirty cliff edge. So we've always used a fishing pole. If it's wet or snowy, we rappel down to the big tree and we cast a fishing line over. Obviously no hook. Then your friends dig the fishing line out of the bush it always gets caught in, and then you reel in some paracord. Once you have that paracord between you and your friends, and rig the 195, or you can carry it over to the other bolts that are on top of the cliff, rappel down, and rig off of those bolts. Now the lines are all different depending on which anchor you're rigging those from. And a line that extends even further, which is 537 feet, isn't a super great line because like 100 feet of it is near the cliff edge, but it's safe enough to walk, and if you want something longer, that is a good option. There is a 3rd set of bolts on top of there for you to rappel down to that rock system that's down there. Now we didn't put any bolts down there. We rigged that naturally by wrapping several boulders with span sets. So if you do want to rig that, you will have to be a fairly confident all-natural rigger. Now for the classic, the first Highline ever, the Lost Arrow Spire. That trailhead starts in Camp 4, just above it there, and you hike the Upper Yosemite Falls trailhead. Now if you don't have a spot in Camp 4, you will have to park in the backpackers parking lot near the trailhead for Half Dome. I highly recommend that you do this hike in the evening and then camp on top, wake up the next day, and rappel, climb, and rig your Highline. The sun sets to the west, and there's that big wall there that you're hiking along, and you will be in the shade the entire time. You would have to start so early in the summer in order to avoid the sun beating on you on the top third of that hike. Unless you are up there with snow, your water source is going to be the Upper Yosemite Falls waterfall. So that's about 1 mile from the Lost Arrow Spire. So plan accordingly. Maybe if you have multiple people in your party, while somebody's climbing it, they can go get a run of water. Or when I did my Lost Arrow Spire in a day project, I just fueled up before I left the river after crossing the bridge. Now to do the Lost Arrow Spire, you have to be able to climb the Lost Arrow Spire. which requires a 275-ish foot rappel, and that requires you being able to pass a knot. And you can either rappel directly off the tree at the top, or you can rappel off of some bolts that are right out of sight. You have to carefully walk down the slope to get to them. And if you use those rappel bolts, then technically you have enough rope to tie your climbing rope to the end of your rappel rope, and then finish your rappel, and you have more than half your rope left over, which you can use to climb with. So if you only want to take two 60-meter ropes, you can technically get away with it by doing it that way. So to climb it, you either have to be a 512B Yosemite climber or a strong 510 climber that can do some French freeing and some minimal aid climbing. Or you can be like me and aid the crap out of it. Now there is a lot of fixed gear on the route, so it's not technically that hard, though there is one section that's really thin, and there's also another section that requires a hook. I will put the gear rack that I used, and I took meticulous notes, on slackademics.com. That link will be in the description below, which will have the beta for every area that I'm sharing in this video. Now once you get on top, the bolts are good enough-ish. You got 3 highlines up there that you can rig. You have the 110-foot highline, the 55-foot classic, and the new 170-foot highline. Now if you want to rig all 3 lines and do the triple, then you may have to bring some hangers, because the bolts that are used for the 170 generally have those hangers stolen. Those Dean Potter sprayed a lot of bolts right there, so I think people feel there's too many, and so maybe they think removing the hanger is the solution, even though the bolt is still there. Either way, you might want to have all the bolts available up there. That area kind of needs to be redone. The bolts are safe-ish, everything's redundant. So you can rig the 55-footer directly into the wall, which is what you rappelled past, and there's a crack right there. Number 3 cams are the best. You can use a number 4, but it's kind of off to the side. And then there's one bolt directly into the wall. It's called Dean's bolt, and it's not new, but it's held everyone so far. Now I like to use the rope that I rappelled with to use it as the backup line for the classic highline. That means if your cam anchor mixed with a kind of a bolt were to blow, then you are backed up to the tree or the bolts on the top, whatever you rappelled off of. It's a great way to make the entire system more redundant. And the other 2 lines are pretty simple. The 110-footer has some bolts on top that you rappel down only about 40-ish feet, and then you have a 4-bolt anchor there. And then the 170-foot highline, you just have to rappel off of wrapping a rock off the top and rappel down, and you also have a 4-bolt anchor in the middle of that wall right there. You're all done highlining and cleanup. You will have to do a Tyrolean traverse, which is nothing more than rappelling sideways over to the wall. If you fix yourself to the original rappel rope, which was your backup rope for your classic highline, then you just take the tail of that, thread it through the anchor that's on top of the Lost Arrow Spire, and then you rappel off of that. The lower you go, the tighter your rope will get that's attached to the tree, and then you'll start to be sucked over to the cliff. Once you're over there, you can pull the rope off the Lost Arrow Spire tip, keep your stuff organized, and then ascend Jumar back up to the top, and then you're all done. So in order to share all the beta that I need to, I'm going to have to make this into 2 videos. So to check out the other lines that are just as awesome, check out our next episode, which will have that. And I know I'm risking creating more traffic by creating this video, but I'm hoping that if you know all the rules and our delicate relationship with the park service there, that you will help keep our access accessible. So please don't break rules, and if you are, do it really, really well. And also, don't leave your lineup for a long period of time. Go and do it, enjoy it, and then tear everything down. If you do have more questions, you can ask me, just private message me on Facebook, and I will give you whatever more beta I have. But if you do go to the Slackademics link, which is in the description below, I am going to put in my section of Slackademics all the beta for every area that we talked about in this video. And I will also have the beta for the other lines that will be in the next episode. So if you want to go take a sneak peek and check those out, all of the beta is in there. Now, if this video beta thing works well for you, maybe consider doing a video beta for your area if you live in a popular highline spot. And maybe I can share it on how not to highline here, and people can enjoy visual beta of popular areas that they may want to visit. So it's pretty inconvenient to go to the park and highline. Therefore, you shouldn't highline. Hey, thanks for watching, but don't be an idiot and go try rigging a highline for the first time by yourself just because I told you where some bolts were. Instead, go with somebody who knows what they're doing. There's a lot of slackline groups in the world today, and you're in luck because Kim organized 1,300 of them on Slackademics. You can check that out and find a group near you. So make some friends and go to festivals to learn highlining in person with someone who knows what they're doing. Now, if you like this channel, please donate $1 per episode to help me create content. Some of these episodes don't cost me as much as others, but you're supporting the overall channel that I'm doing. And by donating $1 per episode, you're not donating unless I continue to create content.